Hello and welcome to the Wisdom and Knowledge broadcast. I'm your host, Jason Hebner, and we're here to discuss people and in particular, how people think. The emphasis will be on relationships, but in time we'll delve into peripheries of relationships as well. I'm a certified MBTI practitioner. However, the views expressed on this broadcast are not necessarily those of MBTI or their affiliates. Because this is my very first broadcast, it's to be a little longer than usual. If you want to skip ahead for the reason of the content of this video, you can use the slider and go to this scene right here, and you'll be able to skip all this opening stuff. So otherwise, let's get started. Let me turn the volume up here. I like a little background sound, right? Perfect. It's awkward, the silence. So I'm going to be posting on this page videos, links, and thoughts to help people as they plan and navigate the world of relationships, both public and private. And hopefully there'll be some fun stuff in here too. I'm looking to really teach about from a Christian perspective, what it is to understand the different functions. But this foundational video is this is the key. It's the beginning of it all. So the further down the road, you're going to see shorter videos. And I have all these cool sound effects, right?
You'll get a kick out of this one.
Oh, snap. You didn't know?
So I'm looking forward to using those. We've got all kinds of scenes. You saw the classroom already in that first clip. Just a one on, hi, how's it going? Shot like that. And we've got a Google search where we can go discuss things online. And yeah, I think I hope it's gonna be a great time. I'm gonna enjoy at least distributing it to my sister. Hi, Jody. Okay. Anyway, let's get started. Music down a little bit. Okay. What's the purpose? This is I'm not kidding. This is a foundational video. It doesn't get, for me, any more foundational than this. Why? Why do we want to understand all this stuff? Let me show you something here. Something cool. This is a chart. C.S. Joseph has done a lot of work on this site. He's a fellow on YouTube and all over the net. I can't really recommend him because of differing views, but this particular chart, he's put a lot of work into. Other people have too, but him primarily. MBTI has another kind of take on this, but I really respect C.S. Joseph's design of this. And I've modified it some. I've changed the color, I've changed the title, some other things. So, but the point is, I'm sorry, I digress. It's looking at, you may have heard in the past somebody saying, oh, they're an ESTP or they're an ENTP. Well, I want to explain from a Christian worldview, and what I would consider is the correct worldview of what they're saying. And so I would call myself here an ENFP, right? Well, what does that mean? Well, it's not really this part here that we're looking at. We're actually looking at the cognitive functions down below this. And that's very important. An important distinction. Most people just stop and say, oh, extrovert. Well, it's very simple. It's a very simple but true understanding. And we need to go much deeper than that here. And I'm going to attempt to do that. So we've got NE, FI, TE, SI, so on and so forth. Okay? So that's kind of the goal, is giving a reason and having these be completely less mysterious, how we get here. That's the goal, going back. So we have to start way back at the beginning, and we want to understand people. We want people to be predictable, right? You want predictability. You say, oh, this guy is predictable. Okay. Well, the first thing we need to know, and we may not be able to know, but we know that we need to know it. Does that make sense? We know that we need to know it, is what somebody's highest regard is. Do you even know your own highest regard? Have you contemplated that at all? Probably you have. So in my case, my desire is that my highest regard is the God of the Bible. When I make decisions and when I go about my day and I think, oh, should I do this or should I do that? I keep in mind that there's a creator God. He wrote the Bible. He gives me these instructions about life. Well, other people have their highest regard. Perhaps it's the environment. Perhaps it's a political party. Perhaps it's a family member. But the point is, we regard different things, but we have a highest regard. Everybody has a highest. Highest is a relative term, right? So there's a highest. What's your highest regard? You might want to stop and think about it. It might make the video more enjoyable, because you then can put yourself in my place and kind of like superimpose yourself. So I've got some notes below. Occasionally, I'll be glancing at those. The key here is that when you understand somebody's highest regard, they become predictable, and you can relate to them better than if you don't know it. Okay. So, as stated, my highest regard is the fear of the Lord. And when I use the word fear, that's like a reverence fear. It's not like afraid of the Lord. In my case, I say, okay, the Lord is the creator. The God of the Bible is the creator. And so when I look at the world, I expect to see created things. When I see judgment, I expect to see judgments that either align with or disalign with God. That's how I'm going to approach the world. And that gives you now predictability as to my actions and how I'll endeavor to live. And if you put in the comments who your highest regard is, then I'll be able to see and have predictability as to your actions. Now, continuing on now, as I got certified at MBTI, naturally, well, first of all, let me go back a little bit. I studied personality and cognitive functions for quite some time, online and in different venues, reading books. And I got to the point where I was like, I need to be certified in this to really have any leg to stand on. And MBTI really has a strong foothold in our country, in the world. The military uses them. When I was at my class, the military was represented. I believe the Navy was there. One fellow who was actually writing instruction manuals for I believe it was the Navy. One of the branches of the military. There were two folks from Apple Computer at this same class that I attended for MBTI, and they were team leaders, and they were trying to build teams for Apple. And who else was there? There were some lawyers, not lawyers, but who was the people the mediators for lawyers? They were there, a number of people. But my point in telling you all this is that MBTI is in certain areas is very well recognized, and so I'd like to get certified and be able to say I'm certified. So that's what I did. Now, getting back to on topic. So having been certified there, then getting back to here, my highest regard is the fear of the Lord. And so it says in the scriptures that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. It says that in Proverbs chapter 9. And in Proverbs chapter 1, verse 7, it says the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. So MBTI talks about, but here's how they say it. They use the word judgment, but it's just similar to the same thing, judgment and knowledge. So I say, the fear of the Lord is the beginning. So if the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge and the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, then you can extrapolate from that, from my worldview, looking out, what people have as a highest regard or they fear, that's going to be the framework in which they develop their knowledge and wisdom. Pretty cool, huh? And boy, you begin to see predictability. That's what we want. Predictability is so helpful going into relationships. That's what we all want. We want a predictable, more than that, we want a desirable relationship where there's good communication. But yeah. So the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. And then we see another split that is closer to what MBTI has taught and other, like I say, places on the internet. That is that knowledge is it's a gathering, right? You gather knowledge. Wisdom, you're putting out judgment. So you gather in, you put out. Knowledge is like a coin. It can be split into two more steps. Sensing, which would be considered the five senses. You see things, you hear things, taste things, touch things. It's sensing. But then there's intuition, which is part of gathering knowledge to know something, but it's not really the five senses. And I want to give you, rather than giving you a definition, I want to give you an example of how I'm using it. Take a look at this, see what you think. Do you see any, can you intuit? And that's the point. Can you intuit this? Okay. You can pause it if you want. I'm going to tell you now. It's pretty simple, I think. It says, if you can read this, comma, you have intuition, period. Now, from a sensing standpoint, there's no language that we know of, that I know of, except for, now I'm thinking hexadecimal and stuff where we've got numbers and letters. Sorry, I digress. Nines are not included in words. The and symbol is not used in words. The plus symbol, okay? So this doesn't say anything. And yet it does say something, doesn't it? To have a full sense of knowledge, everybody has, to some degree or another, the ability to see something that's not here. In fact, it does not say anything, but from the sensing standpoint, but that's not all there is to knowing something. There's intuition, right? And when you use intuition and sensing, you can then see this very clearly. If you can read this, you have intuition. So much so that you could argue, it does not say, I was born in Tennessee. It doesn't say that. Intuition is even arguable. It's not something that's ephemeral or just a mist. It's not. It's very discussable. Is that the right word? Discussable. We can argue. We can go back and forth on what this says by puzzling it together. And having puzzled it together, there's a very clear interpretation. But intuition is what's needed. That's the key. And when we talk about intuition, it's that function that you used in reading this that I'm talking about as part of knowledge, to know. You see this? Now you know. Your five senses plus your intuition. Hopefully I didn't beat that too much. All right. Knowing. Let's move on to wisdom. This is all coming in. This is all going out. Logic is part of wisdom. Values are part of wisdom. Logic, true false. Basically it's true false. Wisdom is true. If you have a false judgment, if your judgment is false, you're going to come up with a broken wisdom or a foolishness. It's not going to work. Similarly, values. Values are not true false. Values are good bad or good evil. And it's a judgment. So logic is a judgment. Think with the logic, it's closer to a computer algorithm. Like what comes in, goes out. It's very systematic, and values will judge the computer program if it's a useful one or not. If you have an elaborate computer program that spits out random numbers for no apparent reason, the values might be low. You judge the logic, okay? And then the logic, the true false logic, judges the values. So they work hand in hand, but you combine them and you get wisdom. I want to make a little note here that wisdom, as I'm using it, is like in its raw form or pure form. Logic and values equal wisdom. Now, in my case, anything that does not align with the fear of the Lord, including my own, okay, if it does not align with the fear of the Lord, it's going to turn up foolish. I said that wrong. That is the case that I believe, but that's not how I'm trying to explain it. What I'm trying to say is that each person, this is where I'm going with it. Each person is going to have their own highest regard. So let's go back to if your highest regard is taking care of the planet, and you're worried about global warming and those sorts of things, and that's your highest regard. In other words, you regard that at the highest. Then you will say things are good and bad based on the planet. See what I'm saying? So the Lord would call that foolish, okay, from his standpoint. And if I'm aligning with the world, I would call it foolish. But you would turn around and say the Lord is foolish, which to me doesn't make sense and is why I've chosen, or I've been, I guess I digress again. But the fear of the Lord then makes the most sense to me as to have who has the highest regard. And I'm not here to argue that. I'm just trying to explain these functions because we're trying to get back to this chart. Remember this chart right here, making sense of this. Okay. All right. So now we've got some symbols that help us understand this. Sensing, 5 senses. My cousin Ben Stedman, shout out to Ben. He's a graphic designer. He's really helpful, and he helped me with these guys. So if you ever need a graphic designer, look him up. 5 senses, very representative. Intuition, we had a hard time illustrating that, but we came up with this where it's, you need this, but you're going beyond it at the same time. So like your magnifying glass is giving amplification to these. Logic, true, false. A scale is it's not really a good bad judgment. You put a lump of gold on this side, you put a lump of wood on this side. They're all the 1 cubic inch of gold, 1 cubic inch of wood, and whoosh, the gold goes down. There's not a value judgment on that. It's simply logical that it's what works. And on the other side of it, you've got the judge standing or sitting at his seat and dropping the gavel, saying, "I will show mercy. I will not show mercy." He's saying this. He's trying to flesh out in this world good and bad judgments. So a wise judge, hopefully, will use both of these. He'll use wisdom, but as that gavel slams down, it's his values or whatever values he's representing as good or bad. The two of them, hopefully, we have a wise judge at a hearing you may attend. So we have the gavel kind of showing values. All right, we're getting there. Don't give up. Don't give up. Here we go. Back to the top again. Sensing. Now, sensing is as we said, the 5 senses. But we have something called, we're splitting it. We're having objective sensing and subjective sensing. Now, objective and subjective here. Put the music up a little more. No awkward silence. Objective and subjective. Sometimes, in my experience, and you may have no experience to this, but for me, I hear a lot of times where people are like, they appreciate objective views and they don't appreciate subjective views. And in this realm, I would like to look at, and this is laid out where neither one of them are good or bad, but they're different states of movement. Objective is going, so I've got another symbol here. We've got these two symbols, and we're going to, I'm sorry about the music, jumping all around. Objective sensing. This is where the dot is the individual. We'll zoom in a little more here. The dot represents the individual. The arrow represents the flow of giving. So this is the individual giving senses to the group, sensations. You may want to think of Elvis, or maybe not, Elvis Presley, right? There he is on stage giving everybody experiences, okay? And this one here is the group giving to the individual. Now this guy on top, he has to figure out what is the average. What does everybody objectively want to have for an experience? And in this one, it's not the average; it's the individual. So it's this 5 senses, but it's a flow of giving this way and receiving. So there's a time to give and there's a time to receive, and that process is being observed here. Each one of these processes have a giving process and a receiving process. That took a long time to say. I apologize. Sensing has a giving process and a receiving process, and we call the giving process, or the extroverted, you heard that word before, right? The extroverted process is going out towards the group. The introverted is from the group into to the person. All right. So we can go through. So in the top section, we have the giving of the and receiving of knowledge. So this is knowledge. In the bottom, we have the giving and receiving of wisdom. The example of we just actually went over that. Okay. Yeah, I think that is about it. Yeah. Okay. So thank you for sticking with me. It's been. I really appreciate it. We're just about done. We're almost over the hill. We're done with the biggest and most difficult part of understanding the individual cognitive functions. The next slide will show the exact same information, but with the cognitive functions and I can't talk, but with the cognitive function designators. When we take a look at it, I will focus on one particular function and explain why I can't wholeheartedly back MBTI. We hold different highest regards, and it will show in the next slide. All right, take a look at this, and we're ready to move on to the cognitive functions. Right? There it is. And I missed it. There it is. Okay, this is it. You just saw these pictures here? The little icons? Well, here they are. There's no difference. None. Zero. This is math. This is this divided by this, divided by this. You extrapolate out. These are all individual functions, but this is what as related to a group, because you have extroverted and introverted. It's sensing, objective, or extroverting towards the group. Sensing again, but receiving from the group. Okay, it's input, output again, but on each one of these particular functions. And as I promised, I'd like to spend a little time on one of them. I'm going to read this and then we'll get back to it. That being the function, the F function. Feelings. Okay, so MBTI will say that FE and FI are feelings, and so we make judgments based on our feelings. Now, if you're like me, and you have a regard for the fear of the Lord, and that's your goal, you'll be aligned with this, and that is that we don't believe that feelings are what we make decisions based on. What we make decisions on are values, what we call good and bad, and God decides that. And what I want to show here is that feelings are the result of values. feelings are the result of the judgment. Feelings are not the source of the judgment. And that's huge. That's a deal breaker for me because we're going for some accuracy here. In MBTI, well, I'll read it to you. I had some thoughts here. So if you're MBTI, right, and you're going to sell your product to the military or major corporations like Apple and blah, as I've told you, but which sounds better? This function here, the values function, is an emotional function, and people make judgments based on emotions. I mean, that's kind of a good way to sell it. Or this function is a values function, and people are judging what is good and bad. That, my friends, would open a can of worms. So if you're in a meeting with Apple or you're in a meeting with the military, and we want to say, okay, let's use wisdom, boys, and let's go to values. Is it good to attack or not attack? Oh, sir, my highest regard is the God of heaven. Okay, that's your highest regard. What's your highest regard? Well, planet Earth or something. Well, what they do is they skip that and go straight to the effect of the values, and the effect of the values or the judgment is emotion, feelings. And they dumb it down, and it just doesn't work for me. So that's why I'm making a point to explain it. That's why this is a foundational video. For all the ones following, you're going to see FE and you're going to see FI in my videos. Why? Because it's the standard way of describing this. But just because it's the standard way of describing this, if you would call yourself my pupil, or if you would call yourself aligned with me in any way, I don't mean to be condescending. I just mean to say that MBTI says it's feelings. On this program, we call it values. You're going to see FE, but you're going to know it's values. And on a lesser note, they use T and TETI here. And that's for the word thinking. So here we have thinking here and feelings here. How is that? That doesn't line up with my regard for the Lord, where wisdom is logic and values. So thinking, and then again, C.S. Joseph helped me understand this part as well, as he has a lot of things, but again, he doesn't have the fear of the Lord. We don't really like the term T, logic being the, well, I don't want to misrepresent him either. So basically, T is representative of thinking. Talking too fast. T is representative of thinking. But we're going to talk about it as logic. So logic extroverted out as rationale, and introverted back in as judging. It's judging the rationale for its truthfulness. You can rewind. I apologize. I hope you don't have to. I want to make this as helpful as possible. I want Christians who have the fear of the Lord and have a respect for these different properties or these different cognitive functions. I'd like them to be able to cite this video as an example of how these functions can be seen in the scriptures, and how it does align with these are good descriptors of how people operate. We're going to spend a lot of time on all of these, and understanding people, it's so helpful. So I don't want to get into that right now, for both of our sakes. I'm tired. You know what? It's 11 o'clock at night. I've tried this so many days in a row. I got to just get it out there. I hope you're patient with me. Let's go back. That's my closing thought. That here's how we get to the 8 cognitive functions. Sometimes you'll hear 4 cognitive functions because they're listing off 1, 2, 3, 4. But other times you'll hear 8 because you got T-E, T-I, F-E, F-I. So some people say 4, some people say 8, but this is what they're talking about. And then we're going to go into a lot of depth with this. And yeah, let's go back to the opening scene. hit the music. If you found this video informative, I sure would appreciate it if you'd hit a like for the page, maybe follow it, share it with friends and folks who you think might be interested. If you've had discussions about personality and you're like, I see it in my world and I know it must have some sort of framework, where is it? Hopefully this video can begin to lay a foundation to explain how and why we should use it in a way that people become predictable. And yeah, is that enough said? Thanks very much, and we're ending the broadcast here.